UN Human Rights Council as well. He also touted that they've withdrawn out of the Paris Accord climate agreement as well. Susan, when we talk about the United States foreign policy, of course, we've seen a big pivot when it comes to that. Trump is not someone who's afraid to ruffle a few feathers. We've seen that with regards to Canada, Mexico. That didn't get as much of a mention, but as Dr. Kupchan mentioned, there was a mention of Ukraine, and he did elaborate on that quite a lot, and we've seen that exchange that happened in the Oval Office that left everyone stunned. So, Susan, what do you have to say on those areas?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think a lot of us expected more regarding foreign policy since so much has been going on. He did touch on Ukraine, as our guest mentioned, to an extent, perhaps more than the Middle East issue, that perhaps those in the Middle East, like Benjamin Netanyahu, had hoped to get more airtime from the president. He also talked about President Biden's failed policies when it came to Afghanistan, that botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. And he mentioned that the United States has apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that Abbey Gate terrorist attack, which killed 13 U.S. service members. So, you know, on the one hand, we know that Donald Trump is often termed as being transactional when it comes to foreign policy and his foreign policy agenda during this administration. But on the other hand, you know, you hear people saying that this is a new approach from Donald Trump. But we still need to understand whether or not it's a new approach, or does Donald Trump and his administration, by extension, notably J.D. Vance, they want to go back to an American foreign policy that was before World War II even? You know, is things shaping that way? And so, you know, it'll be interesting to see ultimately, is there going to be a concrete foreign policy doctrine of the Trump administration that we can really talk about and analyze in the near future?
All right. Now, some other statements that really stood out for me, at least. One, he said that there are over 130,000 people over the age of 160. This is, of course, as per the Social Security data. He quipped that we have a healthier population and a healthier country than I thought. The other big number that stood out for me was $80 million to make mice transgender. Now, we've discussed this, Dr. Kupchan, we've discussed this, Susan, as well, that some of these statements, I know there's going to be fact checking right now. I just want to, let's just get to it. What do you make of these statements?
Well, I think that we have to let the fact checkers do their work. We do know that a lot of the claims that DOJ has made about cutbacks to government spending were erroneous, that they simply made up numbers. How many of the claims that Trump made about the number of people over 100 years old are still on Social Security rolls? I don't know. Is all of the numbers that he rolled out about expenditures on programs abroad for transgender or so-called woke agenda items? We don't know, but clearly what Trump was doing was sort of beating the drum and trying to use these issues as wedge issues. And quite frankly, I would say he's succeeded. Of the issues out there that I think Trump has successfully campaigned on, they are the social issues, this sort of going after the Democrats on being too woke, and also on immigration and excessive government spending. So he clearly is going to keep harping on those issues, but we just don't know at this point how factually correct many of his claims were.
Absolutely. And of course, we at WION, we will be looking into that as well. And Susan, I just want to come to you. And if these numbers are erroneous, I'm just saying if, of course, we still have to do some digging there. This is huge, Susan, and as Dr. Kupchan said, this really ties into the whole woke is trouble, woke is bad, that narrative. What do you have to say about these numbers, Susan?
You know, it's very interesting. Well, there's no doubt that there is waste in the government, and there's no doubt that the American public voted to get this under control. They wanted this waste to get under control. They wanted some outsider to come in to see what's going on, what their taxpayer money is being spent on, which is, of course, every American's right. Just the Democrats just don't like Elon Musk. And that's just the way it is. Whatever Donald Trump does, whatever Elon Musk does, even if they come out with a trove of evidence, it just seems like it's just not going to satisfy those people that don't like these individuals. But I think even the Democrats agree that, government spending is out of hand. I thought it was very interesting. He did bring social issues at the forefront. One of the issues that the majority of the country, both Democrats and Republicans in a recent poll, agreed on was that they don't want biological men in women's bathrooms. And so, he brought that up. He, brought the issue of there are only two genders up. But again, these are issues that he campaigned on. And the polls showed that, Americans, to a certain extent, thought that these, quote, woke issues, as he likes to call them, were just going too far. So I think that's why he was comfortable enough to talk about this. And again, a lot of what he was talking about seemed like a campaign speech. But I think the reason for that is because he saw that it worked. And at least 7 weeks into his presidency, he knows that he has the American people on his side. How long is this going to last? Well, it's anyone's guess. But now, for the time being, he was talking to the majority of people that voted for him.
Right. Now, Dr. Kapchan, of course, counterclaims are already starting to pour in. When it came to the Panama Canal, Donald Trump gave a figure there. He said that 38,000 Americans died during the building of the Panama Canal. It's not a claim that it's something that he's reiterating at this point. Now, some experts would say that that figure is not even close to true. I am just talking about the narrative that is being pushed here. When he talks about Panama Canal, when he talks about renaming the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, when he sends that welcome or that invite to Greenland, if that saying that if you choose, we welcome you to the United States. So what's your assessment of that, sir?
Well, this was classic Trump. Mm-hmm. It was Trump reiterating many of the main issues that he used in the campaign alongside J.D. Vance. I agree with Susan that for now, a lot of the American electorate is with him, particularly on some of these social issues, as well as on immigration and government spending. But I do think that we are beginning to see some softening. That softening is occurring because many Americans, including Republicans, are seeing basic services be scaled back because of the government cuts. Many Americans are on Medicaid, and the Republicans are now talking about scaling back Medicaid. The tariffs that Trump talked about tonight and that are going into effect basically as we speak in 30 minutes, just past midnight here in the United States, they are going to cause very significant increases in the day-to-day cost of living for average Americans. And we are already seeing among independents declining support for Trump. So this was an effort to sort of rally his base. But I do think that there are troubles ahead when it comes to how Americans are reacting to some of the concrete policy shifts that Trump is implementing.
All right. Well, Dr. Kapchan and Susan, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, of course, there is still lots to unpack, but thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One with your insights on this.